have you ever played tennis for your school or just went down to the park with some friends and played just for fun? Tennis is one of my passions. I made the awesome decision to start playing tennis this summer before my freshman year, and I've been loving it ever since. I also find tennis to be a really great stress reliever, especially after a bad day at work, a bad day at school, or just a bad day in general. I feel that tennis will really just lift anxiety right off of you. One of my reasonings for doing this speech is to help anyone that is going into the medical field, physical therapy of medicine field, you know what I mean? And I just believe that, learning about tennis and just how the game is played will really help you all to deal with patient injuries in the future. So that's one reasoning for me doing this speech. My other reasoning is obviously just to teach you all about tennis as a whole and just the background and the history and how amateur and professional tennis are played differently and just all that. So firstly, I'm going to be talking about how the game of tennis is played. So here's just some of the basics. Tennis is played on a rectangular court, like most people know that, some don't, but if you didn't, it's played on a rectangular court. And you can play two games. You can either play singles, which is played by 2 players, or you can play doubles, which is played by 4 players. Either one to me is fun. I personally prefer singles just because I don't have to rely on another person. So if I lose, it's on me. But anyways, so going on to how you start out the game. So you can't just automatically start playing. That's just unfortunately not how it goes. So to figure out who serves and who receives first, you must get a tennis racket. And if you have a Wilson, it's going to be a W or an M that you pick between. And if you have a head, I believe it's an L or a J, something like that. But we mostly use Wilsons. So what you will do is you will get your racket. You all will pick between W or M. You'll be like, do you want W or do you want M? So you pick M, they pick W. So you'll roll it or you'll spin it, and let's say it lands on M. That means that you serve first and they receive. So that is how you start out your game. Now going on to scoring. I personally think that scoring in tennis is very unique because if you think about it, with most sports, it's just 1, 2, 3, so on. With tennis, it is 15. It's about 15s. So when you start out, you're going to have love, which means 0. So both of y'all are going to have love all. So that means 0 all, I guess. And so whenever one of you all first scores, it's going to be 15 love or love 15. So love 15 is going to mean they have 15, you have 0. 15 love is going to mean you have 15, they have 0. So, yeah. So now going on to how many points you can get and stuff like that. So you can only get up to 40 points in a set because in tennis we don't play games, we play sets, and that's technically like games, I guess you could say, but it's sets. You don't just play a full game and you win. You have to play at least 8 sets in high school tennis when it comes to singles. If you're playing doubles, I think it's 4 or 6 sets that you have to play to win. And professionals, I believe it's 4 or 6 sets you have to play for singles and 3 or 5 sets that you have to play for doubles. I mean, for high school especially, it just differs on which high school you go to, because sometimes we'll go play one of these opposing teams and they want to play 6 sets, or we'll go play this opposing team and they want to play 8 sets. It just really just depends on what high school you're playing and what division of tennis you're playing. Now that y'all have a pretty good insight on tennis, I'm just going to give you all the history of tennis. So tennis first originated in Birmingham, England in around, I believe it was 1859 to about 1865, that's what they said. And tennis was originally called lawn tennis because it was played on grass courts by Victorian gentlemen and ladies. Tennis really started picking up in the 1960s because it was starting to be televised and they were starting to have championships for professionals and amateurs. and they were just starting to be recognized, like it was starting to be recognized for like their notable players and stuff like that, and it just really started to broaden the like appeal of the game to people. And so it really just started picking up in 1960 and continued on to 1970s. Tennis started here like the 1870s, I believe. So tennis has been around in the United States for a long time, and it has got even bigger and bigger as time has went on. So now that you all have a good background of the history on tennis, I want to talk to you all about how amateur tennis and professional tennis differ. Sorry, y'all, my mouth was getting really dry, so I just had to cough for a minute. So with high school tennis, like I've told you all before, you have to have 8 sets or so to win a match in singles. With professional, they do something called a pro set, I believe that's what they call it, and it's like where you have to do 8 to 10 games, like 8 to 10 sets, and it's like the best out of those 2 games that you play, that's whoever wins. It's very like confusing and messed up, and I'm really not like entirely too sure like how they do that. Also, in professional tennis, these people are called touring professionals, and they're called this because they compete for prize money and for ranking points. For high schoolers such as me, we obviously don't get any money because, I mean, that's not why we play tennis. We play tennis to win, and we play tennis to be ranked as a higher seed. Basically, what a seed means is it means that you, like, how good or bad you are. So let's say you're 1, that means you're like the best of the best on the team. Say you're like a 5 or a 6, that means you're not terrible, but you're definitely not the best. So like if you're about a 3, that means you're kind of in the middle, like you're not terrible, but you're definitely not great, you know, if that makes any sense. And then lastly, when it comes to the differences between professional and amateur tennis, in amateur tennis, we don't have refs. So basically, we have to keep score ourselves. In professional tennis, they do have refs, and they keep score for them. So honestly, I wish amateur tennis did have refs and they kept the score, because I hate having to keep score just because I'm trying to focus on the game, but at the same time, I'm having to focus on what the score is and like making sure that like I'm not like no one's trying to cheat, if you get what I mean. So yeah, as you can tell, tennis has a lot of different categories as an amateur tennis and professional tennis. They're very different in many ways, but they're very similar in many ways too. In conclusion, tennis is a evolving sport and is becoming more popular as the years go on. I hope that this speech was both interesting and educational, as I took you through how the game is played, the history behind it, and the different levels of the game. So who's ready to play tennis?